Good evening. I'm Adrien Sala, and you're listening to WikiSleep YouTube. If you're enjoying our channel but hate the ads, all of our episodes are available ad-free through our WikiSleep app, which you can find easily by clicking the links below or visiting wikisleep.com. The app has more unique sleep support, including meditations, breath work, ambient sounds, white noise, exclusive episodes, and so much more. It's available entirely ad-free, and you can download it for free by visiting wikisleep.com. There's a free trial to give it a test drive to see if it's the right fit for you, and then it's only an investment of $1.50 a week for better sleep. It's a quick, simple, and inexpensive way to invest in your sleep hygiene and sleep health. As we begin, I recommend taking a moment to get comfortable. Then take a few long, deep breaths and settle in for this calm, interesting, but quiet story. And one last note, no need to smash that like button. You can simply, gently, sleepily click it and subscribe. And don't forget while you're doing that to add notifications as well so you never miss an episode. Thank you, and I wish you a happy, restful sleep in whatever way works best for you.
Hi, I'm Britt Buntain, and tonight I'll be reading to you about Maya Angelou, a celebrated American poet, memoirist, and civil rights activist, mainly known for her 7 autobiographies. Angelou had an extremely colorful life, rising from the hardscrabble Depression-era South to become a pimp, a sex worker, a supper club chanteuse, and friends of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcom X, as well as a journalist in Egypt and Ghana. So take some time here to get cozy, and when you're feeling comfortable and ready, take a few long, deep breaths. Close your eyes and sink into this story about one of the most prolific writers of the 20th century. And remember, if you start to fall asleep, embrace it. Simply breathe it in and let yourself drift off. Angelou was born as Marguerite Annie Johnson in St. Louis, Missouri on April 4th, 1928. She was the second child of Bailey Johnson, a doorman and Navy dietitian, and Vivian Johnson, a nurse and card dealer. Her older brother, Bailey Jr., nicknamed Marguerite Maya, derived from Mai or Maya sister. When Angelou was 3 and her brother 4, their parents' calamitous marriage ended. Their father sent them to Stamps, Arkansas, alone by train, to live with their paternal grandmother, Annie Henderson. In an astonishing exception to the harsh economics of African Americans of the time, Angelou's grandmother prospered financially during the Great Depression and World War II because the general store she owned sold needed basic commodities and because she made wise and honest investments. Four years later, when Angelou was 7 and her brother 8, the children's father came to Stamps without warning and returned them to their mother's care in St. Louis. At the age of 8, while living with her mother, Angelou was sexually abused by her mother's boyfriend, a man named Freeman. She told her brother, who told the rest of their family. Freeman was found guilty, but jailed for only 1 day. 4 days after his release, he was murdered by what is suspected to be Angelou's uncles. Angelou became mute for almost 5 years following the murder. She stated, "I thought my voice killed him. I killed that man because I told his name. And then I thought I would never speak again because my voice would kill anyone." It was during this period of silence when Angelou developed her extraordinary memory, her love for books and literature, and her ability to listen and observe the world around her. Shortly after the murder, Angelou and her brother were sent back to their grandmother in Stamps, where she attended the Lafayette County Training School. Angelou credits a teacher and friend of her family, Mrs. Bertha Flowers, with helping her speak again, challenging her by saying, "You do not love poetry, not until you speak it." Flowers introduced her to authors such as Charles Dickens, William Shakespeare, Edgar Allan Poe, Georgia Douglas Johnson, and James Weldon Johnson. These authors would affect her life and career, as well as Black female artists like Frances Harper, Anne Spencer, and Jessie Fassett. When Angelou was 14 and her brother 15, they moved in once again with their mother, who had since moved to Oakland, California. During World War II, she attended the California Labor School, and at the age of 16, she became the first Black female streetcar conductor in San Francisco. Her mother encouraged her to pursue the position, but warned her that she would need to arrive early and work harder than others. Many years later, in 2014, Angelou received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials as part of a session billed Women Who Move the Nation. Three weeks after completing school, at the age of 17, Angelou gave birth to her son, Clyde, who later changed his name to Guy Johnson. Then in 1951, Angelou married Tosh Angelos, a Greek electrician, former sailor, and aspiring musician, despite the condemnation of interracial relationships at the time and the disapproval of her mother. She took modern dance classes during this time and met dancers and choreographers Alvin Ailey and Ruth Beckford. Ailey and Angelou formed a dance team, calling themselves Al and Rita, and performed modern dance at fraternal Black organizations throughout San Francisco, but it never became successful. Soon Angelou, her new husband, and her son moved to New York City so she could study African dance with Trinidadian dancer Pearl Primus, but they returned to San Francisco a year later. After Angelou's marriage ended in 1954, she danced professionally in clubs around San Francisco, including the nightclub The Purple Onion, where she sang and danced to calypso music. Up to that point, she went by the name of Marguerite Johnson, or Rita. But at the urging of her managers and supporters at the Purple Onion, she changed her professional name to Maya Angelou, which was a combination of the nickname her brother gave her and her former married surname. It was a distinctive name that set her apart and captured the feel of her calypso dance performances. During 1954 and 1955, Angelou toured Europe with a production of the opera Porgy and Bess. She began her practice of learning the language of every country she visited, and in a few years, she gained proficiency in several languages. In 1957, riding on the popularity of calypso, Angelou recorded her first album, Miss Calypso. She appeared in an off-Broadway revue that inspired the 1957 film Calypso Heatwave, in which she sang and performed her own compositions. Angelou met novelist John Oliver Killens in 1959 and, at his urging, moved to New York to concentrate on her writing career. She joined the Harlem Writers Guild, where she met several major African American authors, including John Henrik Clarke, Rosa Guy, Polly Marshall, and Julian Mayfield, and was published for the first time. In 1960, after meeting civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. and hearing him speak, she and Killens organized the legendary Cabaret for Freedom to benefit the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or the SCLC. Angelou was named SCLC's Northern Coordinator. According to scholar Lyman B. Hagen, her contributions to civil rights as a fundraiser and SCLC organizer were successful and eminently effective. Angelou also began her pro-Castro and anti-apartheid activism during this time. She had joined the crowd cheering for Fidel Castro when he first entered the Hotel Teresa in Harlem, New York, during United Nations 15th General Assembly on September 19, 1960. In 1961, she met South African freedom fighter Vusumuzi Make, and they started a relationship. She and her son Guy moved with Make to Cairo, where Angelou worked as an associate editor at the weekly English language newspaper, The Arab Observer. In 1962, her relationship with Make ended, and she and Guy moved to Accra, Ghana, so he could attend college, but he was seriously injured in an automobile accident. Angelou remained in Accra for his recovery and ended up staying there until 1965. She became an administrator at the University of Ghana and was active in the African American expatriate community. She was a feature editor for the African Review, a freelance writer for the Ghanaian Times, wrote and broadcast for Radio Ghana, and worked and performed for Ghana's National Theatre. While there, she became close friends with Malcom X during his visit in the early 1960s. She returned to the U.S. in 1965 to help him build a new civil rights organization, the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Sadly, he was assassinated shortly afterward. Devastated and adrift, she joined her brother in Hawaii, where she resumed her singing career. Shortly afterwards, she moved back to Los Angeles to focus on her writing career. Working as a market researcher in Watts, Angelou witnessed the riots in the summer of 1965. She acted in and wrote plays and returned to New York in 1967. She met her lifelong friend, Rosa Guy, and renewed her friendship with James Baldwin, whom she had met in Paris in the 1950s and called my brother during this time. Her friend, Jerry Purcell, provided Angelou with a stipend to support her writing. In 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. asked Angelou to organize a march. She agreed, but postponed again, and in a macabre twist of fate, King was assassinated on her 40th birthday. Devastated again, she was encouraged out of her depression by her friend James Baldwin. As historian Gillespie states, if 1968 was a year of great pain, loss, and sadness, it was also the year when America first witnessed the breadth and depth of Maya Angelou's spirit and creative genius. Despite having almost no experience, she wrote, produced, and narrated Black's Blues Black, a 10-part series of documentaries about the connection between blues music and Black Americans' African heritage. Also in 1968, inspired at a dinner party she attended with Baldwin, cartoonist Jules Feiffer and his wife Judy, and challenged by Random House editor Robert Loomis, she wrote her first autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which was published in 1969. This brought her international recognition and acclaim. In her career, Angelou wrote a total of 7 autobiographies. Her books stretch over time and place, from Arkansas to Africa and back to the US, and take place from the beginnings of World War II to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. She used the same editor throughout her writing career, Robert Loomis, an executive editor at Random House. He retired in 2011 and has been called one of publishing's Hall of Fame editors. Angelou said regarding Loomis, "We have a relationship that's kind of famous among publishers. All my work, my life, everything I do is about survival, not just bare, awful, plodding survival, but survival with grace and faith. While one may encounter many defeats, one must not be defeated." In 1973, she married Paul Defoe, a Welsh carpenter and ex-husband of writer Germaine Greer in San Francisco. Over the next 10 years, as Gillespie has stated, Angelou had accomplished more than many artists hope to achieve in a lifetime. She worked as a composer, writing for singer Roberta Flack and composing movie scores. She wrote articles, short stories, TV scripts, documentaries, autobiographies, and poetry. She produced plays and was named visiting professor at several colleges and universities. She was a reluctant actor, but was nominated for a Tony Award in 1973 for her role in Look Away. In 1977, Angelou appeared in a supporting role in the television miniseries Roots. She was given a multitude of awards during this period, including more than 30 honorary degrees from colleges and universities from all over the world. In the late 1970s, Angelou met Oprah Winfrey when Winfrey was a TV anchor in Baltimore, Maryland. She would later become Winfrey's close friend and mentor. In 1981, Angelou and Defoe divorced. She then returned to the southern United States because she felt she had to come to terms with her past there. And despite having no bachelor's degree, accepted the lifetime Reynolds Professorship of American Studies at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where she was one of a few full-time African American professors. From that point on, she considered herself a teacher who writes. Angelou taught a variety of subjects that reflected her interests, including philosophy, ethics, theology, science, theater, and writing. The Winston-Salem Journal reported that even though she made many friends on campus, she never quite lived down all of the criticism from people who thought she was more of a celebrity than an intellect and an overpaid figurehead. Beginning in the 1990s, she actively participated in the lecture circuit in a customized tour bus, something she continued into her 80s. In 1993, she recited her poem On the Pulse of Morning at the presidential inauguration of Bill Clinton, becoming the first poet to make an inaugural recitation since Robert Frost at John F. Kennedy's inauguration in 1961. Her recitation resulted in more fame and recognition for her previous works and broadened her appeal across racial, economic, and educational boundaries. The recording of the poem won a Grammy Award. In June 1995, she delivered what Richard Long called her second public poem, entitled A Brave and Startling Truth, which commemorated the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. Angelou achieved her goal of directing a feature film in 1996 with Down in the Delta, which featured actors such as Alfre Woodard and Wesley Snipes. More than 30 years after Angelou began writing her life story, she completed her 6th autobiography, A Song Flung Up to Heaven, in 2002. In the 2008 presidential primaries, Angelou campaigned for the Democratic Party, giving her public support to Hillary Clinton. When Clinton's campaign ended, she put her support behind Obama, who went on to win the presidential election and become the first African American president of the United States. After Obama's inauguration, she stated, "We are growing up beyond the idiocies of racism and sexism. In late 2010, Angelou donated her personal papers and career memorabilia to the Schoenberg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem. They consisted of more than 340 boxes of documents that featured her handwritten notes on yellow legal pads for I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, a 1982 telegram from Coretta Scott King, fan mail, and personal and professional correspondence from colleagues such as her editor, Robert Loomis. In 2011, Angelou served as a consultant for the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C. In 2013, at the age of 85, Angelou published the 7th volume of autobiography in her series entitled Mom and Me and Mom, which focuses on her relationship with her mother. The details of Angelou's life, described in her 7 autobiographies and in numerous interviews, speeches, and articles, tended to be inconsistent. Critic Mary Jane Lupton has explained that when Angelou spoke about her life, she did so eloquently but informally, and with no time chart in front of her. Angelou held many jobs, including some in the sex trade, working as a prostitute and madam for lesbians, as she described in her 2nd autobiography, Gather Together in My Name. In a 1995 interview, Angelou said, "I wrote about my experiences because I thought too many people tell young folks, I never did anything wrong. Who, moi? Never I. I have no skeletons in my closet. In fact, I have no closet." They lie like that, and then young people find themselves in situations and they think, damn, I must be a pretty bad guy. My mom or dad never did anything wrong. They can't forgive themselves and go on with their lives. Angelou's mother, Vivian Baxter, died in 1991, and her brother Bailey Johnson Jr. died in 2000 after a series of strokes. Both were important figures in her life and her books. In 1981, the mother of her grandson disappeared with him. Finding him took 4 years. The New York Times reported that she regularly hosted elaborate New Year's Day parties at her residence. She combined her cooking and writing skills in her 2004 book, Hallelujah, The Welcome Table, which featured 73 recipes, many of which she learned from her grandmother and mother. She followed up in 2010 with her 2nd cookbook, Great Food, All Day Long, Cook Splendidly, Eat Smart, which focused on weight loss and portion control. Beginning with I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Angelou used the same writing ritual for many years. She would wake early in the morning and check into a hotel room where the staff was instructed to remove any pictures from the walls. She would write on legal pads while lying on the bed with only a bottle of sherry, a deck of cards to play solitaire, a thesaurus, and the Bible, and would leave by the early afternoon. She would average 10 to 12 pages of written material a day, which she edited down to 3 or 4 pages in the evening. She went through this process to enchant herself. And as she said in a 1989 interview with the BBC, relive the agony, the anguish, the Sturm und Drang. She placed herself back in the time she wrote about, even traumatic experiences such as her rape in Caged Bird, in order to tell the human truth about her life. Angelou stated that she played cards in order to get to that place of enchantment and in order to access her memories more effectively. She said, "It may take an hour to get into it, but once I'm in it, it's so delicious." She did not find the process cathartic. Rather, she found relief in telling the truth. Angelou died on the morning of May 28th, 2014. Although Angelou had reportedly been in poor health and had cancelled recent scheduled appearances, she was working on another book, an autobiography about her experiences with national and world leaders. During her memorial service at Wake Forest University, her son, Guy Johnson, stated that despite being in constant pain due to her dancing career and respiratory failure, she wrote 4 books during the last 10 years of her life. He said, "She left this mortal plane with no loss of acuity and no loss in comprehension." Maya Angelou was 86 years old when she died.